pretty scary and sometimes hard. Like you got a winning hand and then you dealt the wrong card. It ain't fair, but you're not alone. Down and out, oh high and dry, in the darkest valley or the coldest night you'll find. 'Cause you're not alone. With a song bubbling in your heart, where a story is gonna give you a brand new start. You don't have to tackle this big bad world all on your own. 'Cause it's better when we do it together. All mixed up and upside down, feels like there's no one else around, but it right. You're not alone. When it all goes south and life gets tough and you've been knocked down and the weeds are rough, you just fight, fight, fight. You're not alone. With a song bubbling in your soul, a story is gonna make you whole. You don't have to travel this big bad world all on your own. No, no, 'cause it's better when we do it together. Well, hello world. How you doing today? You're watching the Polaha Chautauqua, and I'm your host, Kristoffer Polaha. Let's get it on, huh? Together. All right, guys, welcome back. Happy New Year. It is 2023. This is we are moving into the 4th year of the Polaha Chautauqua, which is just absolutely amazing to me as a concept. The fact that this thing has been a little train that just keeps chug-a-lugging along. What a wonderful community that's been built out of it as a result. Guys, let me get my tea. Oh, what a treat to be here live with you. I'm in LA. I came home for the weekend. I will be, hello from Asheville, North Carolina. We were just there. I will be in Birmingham, Alabama as the sun rises. So that's the kind of life I'm living right now, which is just rock and roll and lots of fun. And it's good. It's good to be busy. It's good to be working. So, and so many people have had so many things happening, which, curious how Lisa's doing. Is Lisa out there right now? How's her recovery going? Hi from Akron, Ohio. Hi from Oregon. Samantha's in the house. Brenda's in the house. So many people in the house. Hello from Alabama. We got a nice full house right now. So what we're going to do in February, we're going to do Fatherhood February. So the Chautauqua, and historically, the actual Chautauquas that roamed America back in the late 1800s, hello from New Jersey, were primarily for women, adult women education, which is kind of an amazing thing. Aaron's in the house. Hi, Aaron. And so what these Chautauquas would do is that, well, before Vassar existed and Barnard and the sister colleges existed, men could go to college, but women couldn't. And so what these Chautauquas served was sort of like adult education. And when this pandemic started, or continuing education, and when the pandemic started, I went live, and the majority of my audience is female. Most of you are women, but there are men out there, and all of you have men in your lives. So what I wanted to do is dedicate February to Fatherhood February. We're going to make it Fatherhood February. And I wanted to bring on a special guest to me, and selfishly, he's special to me because he's my father. And I wanted to create a sort of moment in time with my dad here on the Chautauqua. I'm going to bring him on, and I'm just going to talk to my dad. And I'm just going to I want to ask him some questions, and you're just going to observe a conversation between my father and I. I have no real agenda other than I do want to, get a couple of points of history down and a couple of you know, and because these are recorded and put on YouTube, it's something that I will have, which I like. I like the idea of. At some point, I want to bring my mom on and give her an equitable shot at this thing too. But my dad's first up. We both share birthdays this month. I'm the 18th. He's the 21st. So February and President's Day has always made February feel very paternal for me. It's always felt like Fatherhood February for me. It's something that I've always been proud of, to be born in the same month as my dad and to share that with him. I always thought that I would have a kid that was born in February. Jude's January, so we're close. But anyway, so with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring my old pappy on. My old pappy. And I'm going to shut down the comments
How you doing,
just
Chris?
for the show. Hey, Papa.
Good, good.
I'm good. Good. How are you doing, Dad? You look good, Papa.
She's my IT
You
guy.
look good. Hey, there's Mom. Mom, you can't just sneak off. You got to say hi. There's my mom and my dad. There they are. All right, Dad. Thanks for joining me on the Chautauqua. You guys have been watching this thing since the very beginning, and when it was an insecurity in the sense that I didn't know how it was being perceived or sort of how people were, if they liked it or if they didn't like it, or how it flowed in as far as me being an actor and me being a person and all of the things, you and Mom always called up and been like, man, that was incredible. That hour was unbelievable. And you guys would just sit back and watch in Reno, and you were always so supportive and encouraging of this show in particular. So I always knew that I wanted to have you come on and talk and just have
You're quite
a
welcome,
moment with you. So thanks
we
for
enjoyed
joining me, Dad.
watching you. We're proud of you.
Thank you, Dad. Thank you.
Yeah, I
All
was
right.
born
Why
in
don't you tell the
Allentown,
people where you
Pennsylvania.
were born and raised? Where were you born? Allentown, Pennsylvania. And
Yeah,
that's famous
we
not
had
only for
Bethlehem
the song,
Steel,
but
Mack
also
Truck,
Bethlehem
and
Steel.
Lehigh Portland Cement,
It
and General Electric were the big companies back then. I was born in 1939.
Okay.
Wow, that's a long
When
time
were
ago.
you born? What year were you born?
83.
How old are you gonna be when you turn on the 21st? How old does that make you? 83
Still,
years old. All right. All
what's
right.
that?
Not too shabby. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
Okay,
How many
I
brothers and
was the second
sisters were
boy.
you born into?
Andy was my
How many
brother.
kids
He's
were
my
there in your
first
family?
brother. Then me, then John, and then Justine, the girl, and Mary. There were five of us.
Okay.
Yeah, when we were in
And
high
then didn't your
school, she had a
mom
blue
have a
baby.
sixth one
They call them
who
blue
passed
at
on
that
pretty
time.
early?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
because
Something to do with the RH
they were
factor in the
born,
blood.
why? They were born blue?
Were incompatible. It should have shown up
Okay.
earlier, the doctor said, but it didn't. So,
Okay.
oh,
Okay.
yeah,
That's
that was
rough. So
tough.
she had the
You
whole,
remember
she
that? I was
went
a
all 9
sophomore in high
months and then
school.
delivered a
Yeah.
baby that was blue.
Right.
So that probably was
Yeah.
pretty, that probably changed the dynamic a little bit, huh?
You know, she never told us how old she
How old
was.
was your mom when that happened? Do you remember? 21.
She was very private in that area. Teen kids. Youngest
She
of
was
15.
always 21. She
Yeah.
was what?
So anyway, we had a good time. Allentown was a nice place to grow up in. There was an estate from General Trexler, and he provided the money for the parks in the area. And the parks were really nice. And I remember that in the springtime, there was the smell of the linseed oil that we put in our baseball gloves. And that's all we smelled all summer, except for the swimming. And then in the winter, the smell of the grass for playing football. And those were the days. And it was
That's
fun. It's
awesome.
just so
Some good.
different. We would go out. They knew we were going to the park, and we'd come home when the sun was a certain point in the sky. Get home around 5 o'clock, and no worries or concerns about what we were doing or who was doing anything to us. That's sad that that's gone. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's different, isn't it? You always talk about like the kids in your neighborhood, and how you guys would play football or baseball, and a
St. Louis
couple of them
Cardinals,
went
yeah.
off to play
Yeah.
professional
I was a slow
sports. You
runner,
tried
though. I
out
had a
for the
good arm.
Cardinals, right?
Good arm. I could throw from the. Here's the thing. The Philadelphia Phillies were the baseball team that the whole family liked. We had the Philly A's too, but the Phillies, they like the Phillies in the National League. But St. Louis had a farm club in Allentown, the Cardinals. And so they had a tryout one day for the St. Louis Cardinals, and I went, and yeah, I had fun. I had fun. But I couldn't run from home plate to first base fast enough. Slow motion.
They're like, "Hey Jerry, you can hit, you can throw, but we need you faster." Well,
My dad, he
hey,
was a
what
good
about your
man.
dad? What did he do his whole life?
Excuse me. He worked at the Bethlehem Steel all his life. Uh, they came over in 1908, I guess, and he grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And Bethlehem Steel was the company there. And he got his start there, and he worked there for over 45 years. Yeah, hard worker, good man. Uh, yeah, and he allowed my mom to be a at-home mother. So she was there for us to help us learn to read, to watch our homework, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I remember him. He
Yeah.
and I have the same. We
Yeah.
had the same size hands. He was a tall guy. He was like 6'4", huh? I remember, like, I had a size 13 foot, and he was in the hospital, and I remember him looking at my shoes, and he put my shoes on, and
Yeah, he
he's
was a
like,
big man. They called him the
we
Duke
have the same size
because
foot."
he
And
had
I
a
was
good
like, "Yeah,
wardrobe, and he really took pride in dressing up when he wasn't working. Yeah. Well,
that's cool.
no, but when they went
That's cool."
out, and they
Like,
usually
what
took
is
a
he in
walk
suits and
and went
ties and all that all the
uptown
time?
and things like that. We didn't have a car. Our family didn't have a car until I was in 10th grade, I guess. So it was mostly public transit, transit. Every Sunday we go down to his mother's house in Bethlehem, and she'd cook for us. She raised chicken, and swung their necks, and plucked them, and she made her own noodles. And we used to enjoy that trip, except at night when we were coming home, we had to cross these railroad tracks. And there was always a train that was scheduled to come around the time we were leaving. And it used to scare me to death. Come on, you got to run, you got to run, you got to
Run, Jerry, run! Like all five of you kids. Hightailing across the tracks. See, I have vivid memories. I have memories of that railroad with Danny, Justine's kid, and we would go and we would get those
Yeah,
rails, those big metal rails. That there was train tracks near the house in Allentown, and I remember going for Christmas,
yeah, the
and your dad
puts.
had this
Yeah, he
elaborate
built little houses and
city
trains. And yeah, that was cool.
that
He did all that stuff.
he
In
built.
fact, during the war, because I was born during the Second World War, right before, uh, there were limits on what you could have. Everything was rationed, yeah. And so he made our toys
Rationed.
and really nice things, airplanes, tanks, swords. Uh, how about they had it nice for us. Out of wood. Yeah, but yeah, yeah.
He made them out of wood,
It
or
was
he would dye metal. Wood. That's cool.
he was
Now,
born in
he was
America, in
born in
Kennesaw.
America, or he was born in Europe. So, so I don't
Yeah,
understand.
that's
So
fact. Yeah.
he was born in America, and they went back to Europe, and they came back. So
I
did they
I
have like a
don't
little bit of money, or
know.
like
You
how
know,
did
it's
that work?
funny. They weren't fluent in English, and his mother didn't speak any English, and the father died early, so I never got to speak to him. Um, and it wasn't until I finished the language school in the Air Force that I was able to speak with her and have a conversation with her. Uh, but otherwise, let's see, he had a brother and two sisters, and all our visits were with him, or two brothers, Joe and John. That's, most of the conversations were with. Yeah, it was. They were back then. The families were close. So it was cool. You didn't have to call up and say, "Hey, can we come over this afternoon?" We just got up and went over this afternoon.
Yeah. And it's true to this day that if you're a Polaha, if your last name is Polaha,
Or the
then
ones
you're
that came over.
you're
Yeah,
related
yeah,
to either Andrew, John, Joe, like you're of this group. Yeah. Which is kind of cool. And you can see it at Ellis Island. There's
yeah.
like
And they
all
were
the
from
historical
Czechoslovakia,
documentation
and
of when they
they.
showed up and
It
where
was
they came
interesting
from.
because their port of embarkation out of Europe was Bremerhaven, Germany. And when I was in the Air Force, I was stationed in Bremerhaven. So that was kind of cool. Yeah,
That is cool. So tell me about that. So you left home at
17.
what age, and
They had
how
to they
did
had
you
to
get into the
approve
Air Force?
it.
How old were you when you signed up for the Air Force?
Well, yeah, but if your parents signed it,
But you have
they
to
let you
be
in. So
18.
they let me. I was the youngest kid in my class, and that was, on the one hand,
Okay.
it was nice being the youngest guy, but everything else was sort of a little negative because the girls were all older than I was. So consequently, all the girlfriends that I had, or the girls that I did go out with, were from other schools because my class didn't, he's a kid. Yeah. So
Right. They thought
uh,
you the little one.
that was, I graduated just having turned 17 in February. I graduated in June. And I
Okay.
applied a bunch of colleges. I got accepted. I did pretty good in school. But we didn't have, my brother was in the seminary. And surprisingly, that cost money. They had to pay for that. And they just didn't have any money. I got accepted Notre Dame for aeronautical engineering. And I realized that they didn't have any money. Unfortunately, I found out years later that, hey, I should have gone. They would have arranged for it, the school itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't be talking right
Financial aid, but
now.
I wouldn't have been born then. So, right. You'd be an nautical engineer
Yeah,
in
so anyway, I got to the
Pasadena,
Air
and
Force.
I would be
I did well on the
handsome.
tests, and they sent me to language school, Syracuse University, which thrilled the hell out of me because I wanted to go to college. I didn't. Because back in Allentown, let's see, there was Lehigh University, Moravian College, Cedar Crest College, St. John's in Philly, Moravian College in Bethlehem, Lafayette College. And all the talk all the way through school was college. You're going to go to college. You're going to go to college. Where are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Yeah.
Where you gonna
So
go? You're gonna go.
that's why I had to go to college and couldn't afford it. So I figured, what the heck? I wanted to go to the Air Force to learn to fly, but after the testing came out, they said, no, we can send you to college for Russian language. And I took it. They gave us a choice of assignments. I chose Germany. Then they sent me to Germany. I wound up in Darmstadt, and Darmstadt. I started to grow. Just the time, I guess, turning 18. And like I said, I had an arm, and we used to play flag football, and I could really toss it. And I found out that there was a tackle football team up in Bremerhaven. So I figured, wow, if I could get on that team, that'd be cool. So I asked for the transfer, and they said, well, okay, let's see. And then they did. They transferred me up there. And now I was in the Air Force. The football team was in the Army. It was an Army team. And the colonel was funny, Colonel Brownell.
Okay.
He would watch the boat coming into Europe, and all the big guys he would assign to Bremerhaven and keep them. and it was a good thing. But anyway, I made the team. I played football for them. Let's see, Bill Cummings from Clemson was the first coach. Walt Cabral, he was Notre Dame, was the second coach. Bob Harsh, Lehigh. I read about him when I was in high school. I ran up and played with him. But and that's how I got from Allentown to Nevada.
That's amazing.
Because the coach played with the coach out in Reno, and they asked, "Hey, would you like to go to college out there?" I had no idea where Reno, Nevada was. I got the map and looked and said, "Whoa, that's way out there." But I got it, and it's one of those things that you had to make the team once you get out there. So yeah, so I did make the team. So it was they paid for everything, and it was cool. But it took about 3 years to get used to the brownness of Nevada, because Pennsylvania was all green, lush, from all the rainfall that we had. And the Lehigh River was right there. The Jordan Creek was right there. Cedar Creek was right there. And out here, we had the Truckee River and Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake, but everything else was brown. So kind of tough. So I figured, look, nobody in Pennsylvania knows about Nevada, so I better do really good so that I could get into a good school, go back east to law school, because I wanted to be a lawyer. And I did. I graduated pretty good in the class, and got into George Washington University, and made it. And it was exciting. It was fun in college. Not too much fun in law school, because 2 of your brothers were born in law school. I didn't have any insurance. They had a TV show called The Paper Chase, and it was exactly like it was the first year in law school. And I enjoyed that show to a point, but it always got my stomach turning. Remembering how it was.
Going to make you uncomfortable because you're like, this isn't really a fantasy.
Be invisible for the class, especially if you didn't get a chance to do the homework. But it was something that I had to do, and I got through with it. And it taught me a lot of things about life, because I was in Washington, D.C., the colored issue, the racial issue, that was prevalent there. Martin Luther King got assassinated at that time. Bobby Kennedy. I worked in a nightclub where there were people who were gangsters, basically. And it was interesting listening to some of the stories, not too much, because they would turn around and look at you if they thought that you were eavesdropping. Yeah. But it was interesting.
Right.
Edward Bennett Williams, he was a big time lawyer, criminal defense lawyer, from Georgetown University Law. And he was the advisor on the fraternity that I was in law school, Phi Alpha Delta, I think it was. And learned so many things, and read the stuff that he wrote, and just watched him in court. He represented Bobby Baker. He represented the governor of Texas. It was fascinating.
And that was the time in our country where, like, not only was it the civil rights, but you had Vietnam War, you had all of the schisms between our social class. I mean, everything was sort of changing. Yeah, and you were hitting the books and becoming a lawyer. What made you decide? So for people who don't know, you ended up becoming a criminal defense attorney in Reno, Nevada, and your career is extraordinarily impressive. I mean, you've always been on the Who's Who in America list. You've been sort of ranked as one of our nation's greatest defense attorneys for a couple of decades in a row, and now you're a judge. You've been a judge for 20. You and I became a professional actor the same year you got elected or appointed judge. So it's been 20.
I got on the bench in March of '99.
20 years or 22? Was it 20? You did? Okay.
Oh
March
yeah,
of 99.
yeah.
Okay. So
50
yeah,
some
so
years altogether
24 years for
because
you.
I passed
Wow.
the bar, graduated in
Wow.
'68, and been in law ever since. I still do it with senior judging twice a yeah. Nice. It was a nice career. I'll tell you, and I say this
Yeah,
a lot.
that's
I
cool.
would have done it if I didn't get paid for it. It was that much fun. I mean, it was,
Well, I think mom would
well, they
complain
say
that you
law is
did do it and not
a
get paid
strict
for it from
mistress.
time to time.
And oh, what?
Jealous mistress.
Jealous mistress, yeah. And that's what it is because it was all time consuming. It was consuming. Uh, yeah, because there were some things that,
Yeah.
as a result
Yeah.
of working too much, but it was enjoyable. It was a nice career.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to DC. So you're in DC, and you said I have two brothers
Well,
that were born then. So what's their story? How did that happen?
it happened. It's funny.
Part of the story, Dad. It's
Certainly,
part of the
Eric,
story.
he's the firstborn, wasn't planned. Then I find out, okay, we're going to have a baby. And I had to get a job. So I looked around, and back in Washington, D.C., what you do is you go to the senator's office and you tell them that you're from Nevada. And they would usually hook you up with somebody. Well, I got hooked up with the Library of Congress, but it was paying minimum wage, and that just wasn't enough. And about a year and a half later, John came. So I really needed a job. And then that's where I really got empathetic as far as the racial situation in America, because I used to go trying to get a job. And what I was trying to do was get enough money that I could pay all these bills and pay for school, uh, but yet not be completely candid with the people that were hiring me because I was going to be leaving to be a lawyer. They say, oh, you want to be a lawyer and you want to work here. Well, you're going to leave us, so we're not going to train you or anything. And I found so many times I was overqualified. You're overqualified. Why would you want to work here? You're overqualified. You're overqualified. And I saw some of these African Americans that were doing the same applications getting turned down. And I figured, well, it's a different life thing. So that gave me a lot of empathy for that situation. And again, I was back there in 64, 65 to through 68. So we had the assassinations. I ran into the one guy that was the head guy for Berkeley free speech movement. Yeah, right,
Oh,
right. They kicked him
yeah.
out
What's
of
his name?
Berkeley, and then he wound up
Guy
at
who started the
Howard
People's Garden.
University Law School. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We ran into each other in a bookstore.
Oh, did he really?
I saw you on TV.
Like, I know your stuff.
Oh, in the
Didn't you? Who did you ride
in
in
the
the elevator
Senate
with? Was it Bobby
building,
Kennedy or was it?
and in the basement, I got in, and I was going up to see Senator Howard Cannon, and he was the big guy from Nevada. He was on the chairman of the Armed Forces Committee, and the elevator opens up, and there's Bobby Kennedy and Ted Kennedy, and me. The only thing was I was starstruck, so I didn't really say anything. I just looked and looked.
And that story resonated because you always dug
Yeah,
Camelot and you dug John F. Kennedy
that
as
was
the
a big.
president. So that when I got cast as JFK Jr.,
That was
that was
that was.
that was pleasing in a very
Kennedy
specific way for you,
made me
wasn't it?
come alive to politics in Washington D.C. and seeing all that stuff. Lyndon
Yeah,
Johnson's daughter, one
yeah,
of his daughters, lived a couple blocks away from us. It was just a power. And then the restaurant that I worked in, I got to work in a restaurant there. Uh, the senators and the congressmen and the big lawyers would come in and sit and have some drinks and dinner, and I could hear them talk and all that stuff. It was exciting. It was really exciting. But anyway, so going up to Senator Cannon's room, I told him who I was and where I was from, and uh, I had a little rehearsal before I got there, and the guys from Nevada said, "Okay, now that you're going to have to know people. You have to know a lot of people." And they gave me a list of all these people that had kids my age and what it was that they were doing. So when I got to the senator's office, his manager came out and was talking to me, his administrator. And they said, "Well, who do you know out there?" And I said, "Well, I know." And they go, "Okay, well, you're good." So I went into the senator, and it was funny. He asked me what I doing, what I going to go back to Nevada, and I told him, yeah. And he says, "You got the two kids?" I said, "Yeah, one's coming." He says, "Okay, wait a minute." And he picked up the phone and he called the Bessel Steel Company, and he says, "I got a guy here from Nevada. He needs a job. He'll be down there Monday morning." No, no, this was in Baltimore. At the,
Where your dad was working?
yeah.
That's so
And I
funny.
went
But it's
down, and
the same
I was
company, just
made
the
the
one in
head of
Baltimore.
the Industrial Relations Committee. Yeah, it was neat. It was neat.
Oh
Like I
my
say,
gosh.
it was a fun experience, a fun career.
Now, was that a moment of pride for your dad? Was he like, what? Was he surprised when he called him
Yeah,
up
that
and
was
said, "Hey,
nice. That
Dad,
was
guess where I'm
nice.
going to work?" All right, so flash forward, you come back.
Because of the football.
Why Reno? Like,
And,
how did that happen specifically? I mean, so
oh,
it
yeah,
was.
yeah. I
I
wanted to go
but you
back to
had a choice. Like
Pennsylvania.
once you left, you could have
Uh,
just gone anywhere.
but when I got back to Washington, I had forgotten how cold it was in the winter and how terribly hot it was in the summer. And then I remembered the cool heat of Reno and the sunshine almost every day and the skiing availability and the water skiing in the summertime and the hiking. And I said, "Nah, Mom, Dad, I love you, but I think my future's out there." So I hopped in the car. My mom, my sister Mary, my brother Andy, and a friend of his, we drove out in a Chevy Impala. They dropped me off, met the coach, stayed for the night, and they went back, and there I was in Nevada, and it was cool. And they drove me
That
out.
was it,
Yeah,
huh? Wow. Know that? I didn't know that
yeah,
they drove you
yeah.
out. That's cool. So you had like a little escort. That's fun. That's fun. And then how
Well,
did you meet
in,
mom, my mom? When when did that
yeah,
happen?
in '68,
So you graduate from George
in
Washington.
August of
You make your way
'68.
back. When did you move back to Nevada? 68?
Yeah, yeah. I just summer
So you moved back
uh,
to Nevada
in
right away.
Pennsylvania. And then I
Okay.
figured, nah, I gotta get out of here. Oh
Okay. So you
yeah,
headed back to Reno. And did you
I
buy
got
or did
back
you rent?
there,
Or what was your first?
and a friend of mine, he was working in this one law firm, and he said, "Jerry, why don't you go over to this Breed and Young law firm? They have an associate, Frank Farrakoff, and he's leaving, so they'll be looking. Why don't you go over and apply?" So I went over there and applied, and I got the job. Now Frank, he went on to Washington, became chairman of the Republican Party under the first President Bush. So he was better, and I got to fill his seat, which was nice. And these guys, there were
Okay.
four of them, and high-powered: Cliff Young, Fran Breen, Jerry Whitehead, and Dave Hoy. But I was the only associate, so I got four lawyers feeding. So consequently, what that meant was I spent a lot of nights working. Yeah, quite a bit, quite a bit. And then
Working.
it turned out that every time they sent me to court, we had at that time a lot of easy cases. The wills, not the trust, but the wills aspect of it, it didn't require too much talking in court. And then you went into the uncontested divorces. You had to make an appearance. Either you're the plaintiff or you're the defendant. In any event, you go in there, you ask 7 or 18 questions, and then they get the divorce and you're out. But when I went over there, I got dry lipped, dry mouth. And man, I couldn't get over that. And a friend of mine said, well, they're going to open the public defender's office. Why don't you apply for that? And if you get it, heck, that's criminal cases. You'll be in court all the time. So I did. I went down and did the interview with Dale Murphy, and he didn't say anything. We had a nice little talk. Didn't talk about anything really, just how you doing. I told him who I was and what I was all about, and he said, "Okay, we'll see you." And next thing in the paper was Jerry Polaha picked as a deputy district public defender. And the receptionist at the Breen and Young firm, they said, "Oh, you didn't tell anybody about this." They were so nice. They said, "Okay, we understand, we understand." And they let me work out that year. So during that year, I had both of the jobs. I was busy as heck, but so we left on good terms.
That's
And
awesome. But you were making a good living.
yeah, that was fun. But so I did the criminal defense law, and I had a lot of trials. I was the youngest guy there. There were two older lawyers. So I was doing most of the trial work. And when I left in 3 years. Me and Jack Grellman, uh, he was a public defender, and we decided, let's go out. And we did. We hung up the shingle. I didn't necessarily want to do criminal law, but because we were recent public defenders and we had this experience, we started getting recommendations, referrals from the other lawyers in town who didn't do criminal law, but their clients or their sons of the clients got in trouble. And I was blessed, as fortune had it. Every referral that I got the case either won in court or dismissed. And so consequently, the reputation grew, and yeah, so that's how I stayed. And it was fun because it's like an actor. I was in the middle of the courtroom. I put the defense together. I lined up the witnesses. I did the dialogue, did the arguments, and enjoyed the spotlight.
Well, this is either gonna tickle the listeners or it's gonna rub them the wrong way. But I remember this is the '80s, and Reno was a relatively small town, and Eric was driving the car, and he might have been going a little fast, and a cop pulled him over, and it was Eric, John, me, and Mike were all in the car. And the cop says, "Let me see your license," and he takes his license out. He says, "Yes, sir," and he hands the officer the driver's license, and he goes, "Eric Polaha. You're not Jerry's kid, are you?" He said, "Yes, sir, I am." He's like, "All right, listen, son." He's like, "You gotta drive within the speed limit." But it was one of those things where I feel like growing up in Reno, you had created this world for us where, I mean, there wasn't a grocery store that we didn't go into where they were like, "Hey, Esther, how's Jerry doing?" Or like, you were kind of a celebrity like in the town. I mean, it was growing up as Jerry's kid. And it was interesting because being a criminal defense attorney,
Yeah.
sometimes it was not always good attention, but regardless, you had attention. You were in the papers, you were in the news, there was always something. And some of your cases did not bring a lot of favor, but sometimes they really did, and you did, which is interesting. How did you feel about, like, just speak briefly on the idea of, because you really did wrap your head around criminal defense law, and you have an interesting philosophy about it in regards to that tri-legged stool of what our government, what our legal system is. I remember going to school, and it was little Jill, and she was like, "Your dad's a snake." And I came home and I was like, why did she call Dad a snake? And because you were defending somebody, that there was a big high profile trial, and you were the guy's lawyer, and the stance was not popular. And you said, you were like, "Listen, I have to defend people regardless, because we believe that people are innocent until they're proven guilty." And it was an interesting take on the law. And when I was doing the St. Jerome idea, you and I had a lot of conversations about how precious and how fragile our legal system is. And I think what we've seen with the cancel culture lately is if you just knock somebody out before you give them a fair trial, their reputation's gone, their way of making a living is gone. and it does make something, it does make our society really special and our legal system really special when you are presumed innocent until proven guilty. And the idea of being proven guilty beyond a shadow of a
beyond a
doubt is
reasonable
also
doubt.
fascinating.
Reasonable doubt. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, it's
Yes. Yes.
reasonable.
But it has to be
So
reasonable.
you can have a little bit of doubt
Yeah.
and
Well,
still
that's
get
it.
off.
And the lawyers,
Uh, right.
the hardest thing in the last decade, I guess, was watching the political mess that we have in the country and seeing the two Trump trials for the impeachment and seeing the House subcommittee hearings and how they approach this. And it's not what we were taught as lawyers in law school. And when we took the oath as judges, we didn't say, I'm going to be a Republican judge or I'm going to be a Democratic judge. You swear to follow the Constitution and the laws of the state and the United States. And then you have the rules of evidence, and you don't have the hearsay. And I understand that there are hearings where hearsay is okay and it does come in. But even so, with the hearsay, there has to be a vetting of the hearsay, the bias of the person that uttered it. Then you're watching what happened with the FBI and with some of the senators, the way they asked their questions, they gave the speech before the questions were asked, and the witness either adopted the prelude to the questions or fought it, and there was nobody to put a stamp on it to say, wait a minute, we're not doing it this way. You have to ask the question, do they have personal knowledge? Are they competent to be a witness here rather than the political stuff? And there was never anybody that had the hammer to say, no, you can't do that. Let's not go that far.
Right. Right. Timeout. Right. There was
Right,
no, right. It
right.
was clear teams,
So, but
clear teams
everybody
knocking
deserves
each other.
a defense. Now, some of the cases that came to my office, I just couldn't do it. And well, the one guy is an easy one. Esther, your mom, bought me a watch for Christmas. She put it on layaway, went to pick it up around Christmas time, and there were yellow tape crime scenes all around the store. Turned out that the place was robbed, burgled. Uh, she went in to ask for the watch because it was on layaway. She paid for it, and they said, "Oh, the guy stole it." About a month later, the guy came into my office and says, I need a lawyer. I was arrested for burglary." And he tells me about it. I said, whoa, wait a minute. You stole my.
You
So I
stole from
couldn't
me.
do that. And the other one,
Watch back.
and I only did a couple of these. The other one was a nasty case out of California, but they arrested him in Nevada and were going to try him in Nevada on some of the cases. And it was too heinous to get involved with. So I turned that one down. But otherwise, I guess my interviewing skills, I didn't employ them as I see them doing nowadays, because nowadays they ask for the money up front. I always ask, what's the case about? And it turns out to be exciting, and then I want to get involved.
You're like, yeah, I want to try that. I want to see if I can do it. And you love the law. I mean, there's no question about it. If anyone who knows you, like, you can literally tell stories for days. You and I had a show idea called St. Jerome that took place in Reno in the 70s, like a really fun idea that I tried to sell to CBS, and still I'm going to try to sell it somewhere down the road. But and your cases are as unique. Like each case, each case could be its own movie. I mean, like you've got so many cool different cases. Now, let me ask you this. You've lived your life. You've had a great life. You've made your money. You've lost some money. You spent some money. You made some more money. You had some kids. They grew up. They had kids. You and mom are still together. What's at the end of the day, like, what's the takeaway? What have been, what are the things that have brought you joy? What are the things that when you sit back and you think, man, I didn't do this and I wish I'd done this, or you know what, I'm glad I did that, and like where do you sit now? Like you're hanging out, you're about to turn 83 years old, and looking back on all of it,
Okay,
advice,
one of the
little
reasons,
thoughts.
one of the
What do you
reasons
think?
that I
What's your
became
two
a lawyer
cents,
is
Dad?
I saw my dad. He worked hard. He'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, come home at 5:30, 6 o'clock. And he did that for 45 years. And I decided, man, I don't want to do that. And all my buddies were going to go to either Muhlenberg College or Penn State or St. Joe's, and then go to work for Western Telephone or Mack Truck. And I figured, nah, I don't want to do that. And then we had this play in high school, Death of a Salesman. And man, I saw Willie Loman and Biff, and I figured, no, 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 no. I don't want to get anywhere near sales. Although the American dream was there, and I did want to pursue the American dream, and but he missed the boat because hard work and paying attention to what you're doing is how you get the American dream. And that's one of the things I learned. You have to pay your dues, and paying the dues gets you through the tough times, in no matter what you do, because there is that bromide, I guess it is. Cream will rise to the top, and if you have what it takes, and you apply yourself, and you outwork everybody else, you'll get there. So looking back, the work, the career was very rewarding. Uh, I really did enjoy, even though it was hard work, I did enjoy it. It was funny, in the 80s, the 90s, no, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, the paper every year did a 10-year look back to see the biggest cases and all that. And, I was there on each of those 3 years. So I did enjoy that. Uh, but then again, there's the other side of it, was the family side. And that was tough because there has to be a balance that is struck. And it's not easy to have that balance. And, reflecting, you and I had a different relationship for a while anyway, until you went to boarding school in NYU. But we had a relationship as you were growing up. You were always dressing up like a lawyer, you and little Joe. So and you're a lawyer. Graham became a lawyer.
Yeah.
You were going to be a doctor. He
And then
became a
Graham
lawyer.
became a
Dad was a
lawyer.
doctor. Your dad was a lawyer.
Yeah.
But then the grandkids, and watching the grandkids grow. It's nice. I thank God I had a good, blessed life. And then the original family, Andy and John and Jess and Mary, they're really, really nice growing up. And my mom and dad did a good job. And for 17 years, they inculcated in me what love of family is all about. And, it works.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Your mom lives on in me. Every time I'm on set, I'll whistle. Well, I'm waiting for setup or whatever, and I'll do this like, and I got a little vibrato in there, and I can hit all sorts of notes. And on both movies, so the one that I just shot, the one I'm shooting now, I've had both my co-stars be like, "Holy cow, you got an incredible whistle! Like that's well, you can whistle like that's insane. You're like a professional whistler." I was like, "Yeah, my grandma used to whistle." Remember when you guys hooked her up? Mom put her in that whistle off in Carson City, and she came in second place.
She was
Like on a
nervous though,
lark.
but she did good.
It's funny, your mom never met a stranger. Your brother Andy never met a stranger. Um, I think, and it's funny listening to your stories. You and I are so similar. Like I was always young because I'm February 18th, so I was always in my class, one of the younger. I didn't turn eight. I mean, I graduated when I was 18. So in that sense, but in the year. And then I also saw how hard you worked as a lawyer and was like, what else
That's
can I do?
that's what your brother Eric told me too. He said, "No, you work too hard, Dad. I don't want to be a lawyer." Then he for a casino and he got a clip on his hip where they could buzz him any minute of the day to get down there and take care of the problem.
Yeah, working hard too, and I'm working hard. I mean, and it's all. I mean, and that's the thing. You find your balance. It's like I'm gone for a month, and I don't see the family. Then I come home, and then you have to find that balance of work and life. And I will say this to you, Dad. There are men in this world that set us up for success, and there are men in this world that constantly knock us down and pit us against one another and set us up for failure. And you have always been a man who has set your sons up for success. And the philosophies with which you lived your life, you made everything seem possible. You made everything seem like, hey, if you set your mind to it, you can do it. You did embody the American dream. Your father came over and worked hard in a factory, and you were like, all right, I'm going to go do this. And you became a professional and a pillar of your community. And you know, we're all doing our thing as the offspring continues to flourish and nourish. And it really is, you've always been a man of God. You know, we grew up Catholic, and so we were always in church every Sunday, and God was a part of our life growing up and a part of the conversations. I remember you driving me to boarding school, and you would listen to, this is going to immediately let everybody know where you fall politically, but you would listen to Rush Limbaugh and classical music. We'd be hearing Rush, you go, rah, 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 and then all of a sudden you'd get tired of him and you'd flip on classical music. And we would just drive and we would talk about the world. We'd talk about things, or we would just sit and listen. And then at one point you were just praying the rosary for me. And I was like, what are you doing? And you're like, yeah, I just pray the rosary for, you know, for you and for your brothers and just for whatever, you know, I'm doing. And it's those, that's what I used to do. So like when things would get tough, I would just start saying the Our Father. I just work my way through, or, and to this day, and so I love the legacy that you and Mom have built for us, and the traces of it, the contrails of it, the evidence of it, the foundation of it is still very much relevant in my life and my kids' lives. And I think you've seen, you know, it's fun to be able to look and see the fruits of all that kind of trickle down. So thank you for creating a world where everything seemed possible and doable. And I really, truly wouldn't be an actor today if that
Let me
mindset
say
wasn't
this.
in place,
You
because I
mentioned
really,
how'd you
truly
meet
felt like I could do
my
anything, you
wife,
know?
Esther, your mom. Let me say, without her, it would have been a totally
Yeah.
different story. I mean,
My shit show. Well, and the same is true for Julianne, and we all know that. Like without Julianne and my
she
family,
was a
it
trooper.
would be a bupkis.
She
And I know
picked up with three kids, and
mom,
then you came along, and yeah, that was something.
yeah, because
Yeah,
Eric,
yeah,
John, and Mike, their
yeah.
mom is a woman named Elka that you met in Germany, right?
7 years. 7 years.
And how long were you guys married for? You and Elka? 7 years, okay. And then that came to a close, and yeah, and then Mom entered the picture, which is a fun story. You want to tell it real quick, or is it too weird now?
Okay, I did a
In
lot of
today's day.
research. I saw her.
Uh-huh.
There was this nice spot right across the street from the courthouse, and Fridays everybody went over there. And I happened to notice her one time. I thought, wow, there's a striking woman. And then I was on town, probably on a date, but I saw her again in a nightclub, and I said, oh, there's that same woman. And you know, wow, she's nice. And then I dropped off a kid at school, and I was parked at a stop sign waiting for traffic, and she drove by. So I go, whoa. So I followed her, got her license number. And a friend of mine did some research for me, and I got the names, and it was to Esther and Roger. And then I figured, well, she's married. And I said, well, wait a minute. So I went to the courthouse and looked up the divorce rolls, and sure enough, Esther divorced Roger. So she was single. So I gave her a call and said, hi, you don't know me.
I've just stalked you. I've just
Every
completely
step
tracked you
we
down
took,
through private records.
and I
However,
But I asked if she'd like to go to lunch, and she said,
I promise you, it's not creepy.
we hit it off.
Mom's side of the story is funny. She knew she was going to go out to lunch with a lawyer, and she bought all these magazines to bone up on all the current topics, so that she would have enough to, so you got some stuff to talk about. I'll have her come on too one day, and she can tell her side of it. But yeah. All right, Dad. Well, that's that time. It's
Nah,
the hour's
just
up.
proud of
Is
you.
there anything you want to sign
Yeah,
off
watching
with?
you on the screen, on the TV thing. Yeah, that's Chris. Yeah, so proud. And that American Prince thing was a big deal. The governor was there in our house watching it. Yeah. And you turned out to be one heck of a father too. So congratulations to you.
Thanks, Mom. You're like, what? Well, hey, I learned from the best. Hey,
You'll
I
use cue
love
cards.
you guys. What? All right, I'm gonna go. Dad, why don't you say a little, just a quick little prayer for people? Do you mind? Just whoever's
Sure,
watching,
that's
just pray
cool.
for them for their week,
Dear
and then we'll sign
Father
off. Is
God,
that cool?
we ask your blessing on
Okay.
people that are connected to the show, who watch the show. We ask that the messages that come forth are inspiring, that'll bring these people closer to you. And we just ask your continued blessing on this country and the situation in the Ukraine and their message of love, Father. We ask that it is embedded more forcefully in the hearts of the people around the world. We thank you, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. Love you, Chris.
Amen. All
Goodbye.
right, Dad. I love you. All right. Have a great week. I'll see you guys later. Everybody watching, have a great week. We will see you next week. Bye bye. I love you, Dad. Bye, Mom. Love you.
I'll leave.